Hello, Rabbi.
Good morning, Joe.
Lashana Tovah.
Thank you very much. A happy New Year to you as well.
So, as we approach the high holidays, I always look forward to them for a lot of different reasons. But besides the apples and honey, always enjoy your sermons.
Well, one of the sermons I'm going to be doing involves staying away from extremes in our thinking. By that, I don't mean Democrat, Republican, left or right, not anything other than having this vision that everyone is good or bad, and I judge everyone as good or bad. And therefore, I put my support, I pay attention to what I define as good and shy away from people that are bad. Turns out that in the universe, people have both the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination and the bad inclination. As human beings, we're capable of doing good. We're capable of choosing to do something that's harmful to ourselves and others. And even if we look at our heroes, whether they're biblical, Moses was a murderer. Remember that? He saw a taskmaster beating a slave, so he killed him and then buried him in the desert and then told the Hebrew slave to keep his mouth shut. And later on, Moses violates several commandments, and God threatens to kill both Moses and his child. And Moses' wife, Zipporah, who is not Jewish and who happens to be a Black woman, she's from Africa, and she intercedes with God. And God listens to her, and she ends up saving Moses' life. Yet we elevate Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our teacher, and we talk about the not all good, not all bad. He was human. Look at Abraham passing his wife Sarah off as his sister in order to save his life and almost gets the king killed, God's justice coming down. And again, there has to be someone interceding. And yet we follow it through. Isaac, Jacob, all these biblical heroes. And then we can also look at our own American heroes and people we admire or look up to. They weren't all good and they weren't all bad. And there's a real danger, and I'll call it a gray area, but I don't want to add to the confusion of thinking that gray means inaction or not doing anything. What I mean is living in that area where events can be either good or bad, and we have to take action. We need to do something. And if I wait until I perceive this is good, may never do anything. And the literature is full of statements. And one of the great rabbis said he carried a piece of paper in each pocket. One said, "You are but dust," and the other said, "You are a little lower than the angels." And he said, this would remind me that I can do good, I can do bad. And there's no such thing as perfection. Perfection, thinking in absolutes is so devastating. You would never draw another cartoon because what are you going to, if you, oh, this isn't good enough, or this is terrible, or I'm going to wait for the right message. Nothing would ever happen.
But something you said about heroes begs the question. So can we accept heroes that are not perfect, or do we need our heroes to be perfect?
I think we need our heroes to be people, human beings. I cannot emulate or be like someone who is a Greek god, so I'm not going to try. However, when I look at individuals, whether it's a general, whether it's a religious, a spiritual, doesn't matter where they are, and I see, gee, they made mistakes. They made not some They didn't just do some things that were so nice. They made some bad choices, but their good outweighed. And I think therein lies the key, Joe. And we're not talking about following someone who never did anything for the good, never helped. We're not talking about that. Talking about a human being that's flawed, and their good decisions outweighed their bad. And we can watch their life. Look at Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses. Look at how their lives changed as they moved along the road in their journey. And they became better people. They learned, they had better goals. And I think therein lies the key. It's not just following someone, a cult leader who's telling people to drink Kool-Aid or to save their quarters to go on a comet, or allows them to get diseases and sick while they're waiting for something. This isn't what we're talking about, because that's just bad. And there's no balance. We're looking for balance, learning from.
Kids were always fans of Babe Ruth, but I don't remember reading any stories about young kids before their Sunday afternoon softball games eating a dozen hot dogs and drinking a gallon of beer before playing. So maybe we can accept the flaws as long as the total package weighs in as a success, as a good, as a role model.
And I think that's one of the lessons of the High Holy Days. And as we go through our readings, one of the things we read is that Abraham, hearing God tell him to sacrifice his son, and God finally having to stop him because it's not a good idea. And so we want to think, wait a minute, this is our lesson about living in the real world. That's not something that would work. You don't kill the people that are going to carry on the history. And so we need to take a look at all these events, all these people. But then what that leads to is my being able to do and not getting locked in and not torturing myself. It takes a lot of energy to hold on to an extreme view of right or wrong, of perfection, a lot of energy. And you can't enjoy life. You're not going to enjoy life because the energy that you use to enjoy life is being used to maintain what isn't in the world. Look out the window. What happens in the world? Who do we need as leaders? Who do we need as heroes? We need people that were successful, that worked for the good of all of us, that we can emulate. And that's our lesson for Rosh Hashanah this year, is I'm going to call it living in the gray area, living in an area where we acknowledge that people have good things to say, people have bad things to say, and that doesn't make them a bad person or a good person. They are who they are. Now I have to weigh what they're saying and not lock into any one of these.
Well, one thing I know for a fact, Rabbi, is while I don't always agree with everything we talk about with you, I do know I've never heard you say anything that I would say is bad. So thank you very much. Lashana Tova again. And I look forward to that sermon.
And Lashana Tovah. And when Yom Kippur comes, I wish you an easy fast.